Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich tried to clarify Cruz's comments in his own speech.
I think you misunderstood one paragraph that Ted Cruz, who is a superb orator, said. And I just want to point it out to you. Ted Cruz said, you can vote your conscience for anyone who will uphold the Constitution. In this election, there is only one candidate who will uphold the Constitution.
Newt Gingrich is with us now. Mr. Speaker, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
You had to do that on the fly, trying to explain Ted Cruz's comments?
Well, I was a little bit on the fly, but I was pretty happy to do it.
Yeah.
No. You had a clean up on aisle 3 kind of moment. Did you know that was going to be your? Did you know that you were going to have that job before the evening started? That's what we
spent as much time as I've ever spent on any speech, developing a whole section on national security, which I knew instantly would then be drowned because covering Ted Cruz would be easier and more amusing.
Why did you feel the need to do that? Why did you want to do that?
Well, if you watch the crowd out here, they were unhappy and rusty. And unless you got closure, they were going to keep worrying about that for the rest of the evening. So I thought, what better way than to explain to them what Ted really meant to say if you read carefully what he said.
Do you think he was surprised by the reaction?
Totally. I'm sure he was totally surprised.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Speaker, we knew we had the advance text from Ted Cruz. Even Donald Trump said he'd read the speech 2 hours before. Why allow him to go on stage? Is this one more sign of a mismanaged convention?
No, I think having invited him, and I think Trump made the right decision. You either don't let him speak, which then becomes a huge story. All of you go cover Cruz. Cruz is the innocent victim. Oh, gee, or you let him speak and take his risk. I mean, he had a passionate group, including probably half the Cruz people, who were here to elect the next president. And they were, frankly, very offended by the way you could tell on the floor. I mean, I had 3 of my folks were on the floor, and they said it was unbelievably intense.
Yeah.
Turning to national security, you said you spent a lot of time on your speech on that part.
Yes.
There's some controversy also because of what Donald Trump told the New York Times about NATO, and that he might not honor the NATO agreement, because if they had not paid their fair share. That goes against the grain of everything has been said, and also raises the question is what is his judgment about treaties? Is it about whether they bring us economic benefit or something else before we honor a treaty? And it also raises a question, will it cause other countries around the world to worry about America's commitment?
Well, look, I think first of all, countries ought to worry about our commitment. But they ought to worry about our commitment under any circumstance. Every president has been saying that the NATO countries do not pay their fair share, which is not just important about a financial thing. They can't do anything militarily.
Well, we're not doing this for the benefit of those countries. We're doing it for the benefit of America's interest in the world.
Right. So you have only 2 countries in the NATO alliance, other than the United States, pay 2% of their gross domestic product for defense. So you now have all of these people who are not doing their fair share. They can't militarily function. And they're saying that, which means that they're a source of weakness, not a source of strength.
That's fine. That's an argument to make. You know national security.
Right.
But to my point, do we base our foreign policy interests on whether somebody pays their bills, or do we base our foreign policy interests on what is best for America's national security? We're in Korea not because Korea is paying some bills. We're in Korea to contain North Korea and Kim Jong-il, not about whether somebody's contributing to some NATO alliance.
And if the South Korean government was as short-sighted and as lacking in seriousness as about half the NATO governments, we'd have to have a serious debate about whether or not we'd stay in Korea. You had the right question, but you assumed the answer. The right question is it in America's interest to sustain a relationship where after several presidents, now this is not, Bush was doing this. I was with Rumsfeld when Rumsfeld was making the same case. These guys have had 20 years to fix this. They refuse to fix it.
Specifically, the New York Times asked Donald Trump, if Russia came over the border into Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, places Americans may not know about, but would we come to their immediate military aid? If you were president, would you come to their immediate military aid if Russia went into the borders of other countries?
I would think about it a great deal for this reason.
Before you would do it.
Estonia is in the suburbs of St. Petersburg. The Russians aren't going to necessarily come across the border militarily. The Russians are going to do what they did in Ukraine. 40% of Estonia is Russian. They're suddenly going to say we're being mistreated. They're going to have a militia. I'm not sure I would risk nuclear war over some place which is the suburbs of St. Petersburg. I mean,
Wow.
I think we have to think about, what does this stuff mean? Are you really?
So our treaties don't matter. Our treaties don't matter.
Our treaties have to be thought about carefully, and treaties which are now go all the way back to the 1940s.
I just
What
think it
kind of
opens up a
message is
huge.
this?
Yeah, that's the point. It's a huge message. If the United States is saying, or you're saying, that if there's a Trump administration,
We're not going to honor our obligation.
you're not going to honor your obligation, and that it's.
I think he would honor his obligation. He's also saying he might rethink the
Because
obligation.
one of the arguments you have made is that when Assad crossed a red line, that it was a terrible thing for the United States,
Sure.
because we did not do what we said we were going to do.
That's right.
That America's word is important.
Right.
And now you're saying America's word is not
No,
important.
What I'm saying
That's what
is,
you just said.
What I'm saying is, if Trump went into office and said, we have 1 year to fix this, which you would have, I mean, you can't just terminate NATO overnight. But there are provisions for terminating NATO. He said, we have 1 year to fix this, and unless you agree to do your fair share and you agree to be
Okay, so
responsible.
are you then saying that that Trump thinks we should terminate the agreement with NATO?
I'm saying that I think Trump thinks there ought to be a very serious conversation about us being the people who defend people who won't defend themselves.
All right. Thank you, Speaker.
Good.
We're going to have to leave it there, but for sure to be continued. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Good to be with you.
Good to have you.